I was sitting in my old rocking chair by the window when my grandson, Ethan, crept into the room. His little hands were shaking, and his voice trembled as he whispered, "Grandma, Dad said he's going to take your house away." For a second, I thought I hadn't heard him right. I stared at him, those big innocent eyes filled with fear, and I felt my stomach drop. My son, my own flesh and blood, was planning to take my house. The house that held every memory of our family. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest as I tried to process his words. "Tell me honestly, if you were in my place, what would you have done? Let me take you back to where it all began. I'm a 68-year-old widow living alone in the same home my late husband Michael and I built together 42 years ago. Every corner of this house whispers his name. His laughter still seems to echo through the hallway. After Michael passed away from a heart attack 8 years ago, this house became my anchor. My son, David, was all I had left. He'd always been ambitious, sometimes too ambitious, but I never imagined he'd turn against me. David had a beautiful wife, Linda, and one son, my precious Ethan. They lived a few hours away, but lately, David had been visiting more often. At first, I thought it was out of concern. He'd bring groceries, help with the yard, even offer to handle my bills, because, as he put it, "Mom, you shouldn't worry about all that paperwork at your age." I was touched. I thought he was finally showing the compassion his father always wanted him to learn. But little by little, I started noticing things that didn't feel right. He'd sit at the dining table with my mail spread out, muttering about property taxes, insurance, and financial adjustments. Once, I caught him taking pictures of my documents. When I asked what he was doing, he smiled and said, "Just organizing things for you, Mom. You don't need to stress about it." I wanted to believe him. I always wanted to believe my son had good intentions. Then came the day that shattered that belief. Ethan, my sweet 10-year-old grandson, came over one weekend to stay with me. We baked cookies, watched old cartoons, and I tucked him into bed like I always did. But that night, he came to me trembling, his face pale. "Grandma," he whispered, "Dad said you won't have this house for long. He said it's his now." I froze. My heart felt like it stopped. I tried to smile for Ethan's sake and asked him what he meant. He looked down and said, "He told Mommy that he's making sure you move to a small apartment because you don't need a big house anymore." That night I didn't sleep. I sat awake, replaying every conversation with David, every form he'd asked me to sign. The next morning I went through my papers, and sure enough, something was off. My property deed was missing. Panic surged through me. I called David immediately. He didn't answer. I called again. Finally, he texted, "Don't worry, Mom. I have your documents safe with me." That was it. Just that. No explanation. My hands were shaking so badly that I could barely hold my phone. A few days later, he showed up at my door with a forced smile. "Mom, we need to talk," he said, walking in without waiting for me to invite him. He sat me down and started talking like it was some kind of business deal. "Look, the market's changing, and it's not safe for you to keep this house. You're better off selling it. I'll handle everything, and you can move into a nice senior apartment near us." His tone was smooth, almost rehearsed. I felt sick. "David," I said quietly, "this house is my home. Your father built it. I'm not leaving." He sighed, rubbed his temples, and said, "Mom, don't make this harder. You can't live here alone forever. You don't even drive anymore. It's for your own good." I looked at him. This man I had raised. The same little boy who used to run around this living room with toy cars. And I realized he wasn't here out of love. He wanted the house. My husband's house. My home. I didn't argue further that day, but inside, I made a silent promise he wouldn't take it away from me without a fight. That night, I called my lawyer, an old friend of Michael's, and told him everything. He asked me to come in the next morning with whatever documents I had left. I gathered everything. Insurance papers, bank statements, the few copies of property records I still had, and we discovered that David had already started the process of transferring ownership into his name. He had used the power of attorney form I'd signed months earlier when he told me he needed it for emergencies. I felt the blood drain from my face. My own signature was betraying me. My lawyer assured me we could fight it. He drafted a legal notice immediately, suspending any transfer activity until further investigation. But I knew David wouldn't stop easily. And I was right. When he found out I'd hired a lawyer, he called me in fury. "You went behind my back," he shouted. "After everything I've done for you?" His voice cracked with anger. "Mom, don't make me the bad guy here. You know this is the smart move." I tried to reason with him, but he hung up. For days, I barely ate. I couldn't believe the child I had loved, protected, and sacrificed for could betray me like this. Then something unexpected happened. Ethan called me one afternoon, whispering again. "Grandma, Dad's really mad. He said you made trouble for him. He said he's gonna make sure you lose the house now." I tried to stay calm for him, but inside I was breaking. "Ethan," I said gently, "I'll be okay. Don't worry, sweetheart." But he started crying. "Grandma, please don't be mad at him. He's scared. He said we need the money." My heart ached for that little boy, caught in the middle of something he didn't understand. A week later, I got a letter in the mail, official and cold. It was from David's lawyer, demanding that I sign off on the property, voluntarily, or face legal proceedings. That was the final straw. I'd spent my entire life being kind, forgiving, patient. But that day, something inside me snapped. If my son wanted to treat this like a game, I was going to play smarter. I decided to teach him a lesson he would never forget. Before I tell you what I did next, I want you to pause and think. What would you have done if your own child tried to take away your home? Would you fight back? Or would you give in, hoping they'd realize their mistake later? Tell me in the comments below, because at that point, I had no idea if I was about to make things better or destroy what was left of my family. Alright, here's what happened next. I went straight to my lawyer again. We worked quietly, secretly. I legally revoked the power of attorney, filed for fraud investigation, and added a clause to my will that transferred ownership of my home directly to my grandson Ethan. But not until he turned 25. I didn't tell anyone. I wanted David to believe he was winning. I even pretended to go along with his plan, nodding during phone calls and agreeing to think about selling. Meanwhile, my lawyer filed everything under confidentiality. 2 days later, David came by again, this time with a big smile. "Mom, I'm proud of you. You're finally seeing reason," he said, as if I were some stubborn old woman who'd finally come to her senses. I just smiled back. Inside, I was burning. He didn't know that while he was scheming, I had already sealed his fate. Then came the twist I didn't expect. Ethan showed up one evening, teary-eyed, clutching his backpack. "Grandma, I need to tell you something," he said, his voice shaking. "Dad said you're giving him the house now. But I don't want him to have it." I told him to stop, and he got really mad. He yelled at me. He paused, then whispered, "Please, Grandma, stop whatever you're doing. Don't make Dad angry anymore." That broke me. I realized my little plan for revenge was starting to hurt Ethan, the only innocent person in this mess. I hugged him tight. "Sweetheart, I'm not trying to hurt your dad. I just need to make sure what's right stays right." He looked at me with those wide, tearful eyes and said, "But Dad's scared. He says he's going to lose everything." I didn't know what to say. I wanted to protect my home, but I also didn't want my grandson growing up hating his father. A few days later, the truth finally came out. Linda, my daughter-in-law, called me privately and confessed everything. David had lost his job months ago. He'd made some bad investments and was drowning in debt. He'd taken loans using his house and car as collateral, and now the banks were after him. That's why he wanted my house. He thought selling it would save his reputation and keep his family afloat. I sat there, silent, realizing this wasn't just greed. It was desperation. But that didn't make it right. I met with David one last time. I invited him to lunch, just the two of us. When he walked in, he looked tired, older than his years. "Mom," he said quietly, "I didn't mean for it to get this far. I didn't know what else to do." I could see guilt all over his face. I placed the legal papers on the table, the ones confirming the house was now safe and couldn't be touched. "David," I said softly, This house will stay in our family, but not yours to sell. When Ethan grows up, it'll be his. I won't let my husband's legacy be lost because of your mistakes." He stared at the papers, speechless. Tears welled up in his eyes. I'm sorry," he said, his voice cracking. "I was scared. I thought I was helping everyone." I nodded. "You were helping yourself, David. And you almost destroyed your son's trust, too." He broke down right there at the table. It wasn't the revenge I imagined. But maybe it was the closure we both needed. Since then, things have changed slowly. David started therapy, got a stable job again, and began rebuilding his life. Our relationship isn't the same. It probably never will be. But at least we're speaking again. Ethan knows now that honesty matters more than anything. Sometimes he still asks, "Grandma, are you mad at Dad?" And I tell him, "No, sweetheart. I just hope he learned that love means protecting, not taking away." Now, whenever I sit in that same rocking chair and look out at the garden, I think about how close I came to losing everything. Not just my home, but my family. The house still stands strong, full of memories, full of life. And someday, it'll be Ethan's. I made sure of that. So, tell me, do you think I did the right thing? Was I wrong for protecting my home the way I did? Or should I have forgiven my son and trusted him despite everything? I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you were on my side, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more real stories like this. And don't forget to comment below. What would you have done if your own child tried to take away your home? Thanks for listening, and I'll see you all in the next story.